All right, welcome everyone. My name is Jamie Cobes. I see a lot of familiar faces today. Thank you for joining me. This is actually a monthly series that I run, and the topic changes. So this month, Digital Tools for Teaching is about dialogues. If you are joining me in person via Zoom, you will receive an email at the end, and I share both the recording and a handout. And the handout has links and examples to all the tools that I'll talk about today. If you are joining me on YouTube and you're watching this video later, the handout will be linked in the description of the video. The agenda today, I would like to start by first telling you that I have a very specific approach to teaching dialogues. So I wanted to make sure that I named that approach and didn't make any assumptions about the fact that maybe we teach dialogues differently. And it's that approach to teaching dialogues that framed the digital tools that I want to present to you today. So I have tools that I'd like to tell you about that will help you generate a dialogue, help you record and share a dialogue with a learner, and then help you build dialogue comprehension. We are a small enough group that I am very open to you just unmuting and asking questions whenever you have them. You can also put those in the chat and I will try to address them as they happen. So the first part is the approach to teaching dialogues. I am a trained French teacher. I taught high school French for 6 years, and I am now, in addition to working for Wisconsin Literacy, I volunteer with my local literacy agency, and I tutor adult ELL learners. And when I teach a dialogue, I like to use what's called the communicative approach. And that is all about really using language for the purpose of communication. And dialogues are an authentic way to teach language in context. It's an authentic format. We talk with each other. That's a dialogue. And then I'm going to give it a purpose by teaching language in a very specific context. Communicative approach also uses dialogues as an oral activity first, because they are authentically oral. So when I teach a dialogue, it's a listening activity first, and I really want to isolate this skill. So I do not show a learner the dialogue in print. We're just working on listening skills first. And I repeat the dialogue as often as needed, but I like to also maintain a normal speaking pace. So I don't slow down that dialogue too much, because this is going to give learners an authentic experience of like, what do I do? What are some strategies that I use if I don't understand everything a speaker is saying? Then we move into speaking. So I ask a learner to repeat the language in the dialogue, but I don't stop to translate or explain the vocabulary yet. They're just repeating the language, and it's giving them an opportunity. If I've done my job right and sort of set up the context of the dialogue and what it will be about, it's giving the student, the language learner, the opportunity to construct their own meaning and really make connections in their brain without relying on any translations first. And then finally, I do include reading and writing, but I use those sort of as an after activity to build comprehension and to extend the learning. So you may teach dialogues differently, and I'm not saying that one way is right or wrong, but this is how I framed the tools that I want to present to you today. And before I show you those tools, I do have this really great video. This comes from Pro Literacy, and we use this in our English language learning tutor training to give a really great example of what it means to teach a dialogue using the communicative approach. So I'd like to play this for you. Let me make sure I'm sharing sound.
We're going to do a simulation to demonstrate how to teach a dialogue. Now, in this simulation, you're going to be in the position of the students. And the dialogue is in Indonesian, so you won't recognize the words. Are you ready? Apa kabar? Apa kabar? Baik-baik saja. Dan Anda? Baik-baik saja. Dan Anda? Baik. Apa kabar? Baik-baik saja. Dan Anda? Baik. Apa kabar? Baik-baik saja. Dan Anda? Baik. Apa kabar?
Apa kabar?
Apa kabar?
Apa kabar?
Baik-baik saja. Dan Anda?
Baik-baik saja dan Anda.
Baik-baik saja. Dan Anda?
Baik-baik saja dan Anda.
Baik.
Baik.
Apa kabar?
Apa kabar?
Baik-baik saja. Dan Anda?
Baik-baik saja dan Anda.
Baik.
Baik.
Apa kabar?
Baik-baik saja dan Anda.
Baik. Apa kabar?
Bye-bye, Sanja. Dan Anda.
Baik.
Bye.
Apa kabar?
Bye-bye, Sanja dan Anda.
Baik.
All right. So what I like about that video is that it's a great example of the I do, we do, you do method of teaching. So there's lots of modeling and repetition from the instructor, and then a choral repetition from the learners, and then each learner also gets to practice the lines in that dialogue. And also, I think it's a great example of using a dialogue as an oral activity first. You'll notice that we never saw the printed version of that dialogue, and we never got a translation. So I don't know how you feel, but I still don't know exactly what those lines mean in that Indonesian dialogue, but I feel fairly confident that it's something that you say when you meet somebody for the first time, when you're greeting them. And so I was constructing at least that meaning on my own through this approach. So it's with that approach in mind that I want to share with you an example of a recent experience I had tutoring. And before I do that, if you could just put in the chat and share with me, what the instruction that you do or that your tutors do, is it mostly in person? Is it virtual? Is it both? All right, so a couple in person, one both. All right, mostly in person, it looks like. So I'll share my experience with you. I was tutoring recently. I was tutoring an adult English language learner. And at the end of every lesson, I ask, what do you want to learn next week? because we are definitely following a specific curriculum, but there's always space in the lesson to work on what is immediately relevant to the student. And it turned out that she was preparing to help a friend in the coming weeks buy new prescription glasses. And she was going to act as a translator, an interpreter for this friend when he went to buy his glasses. I want to point out that she was a pretty advanced English learner, and so this is a pretty advanced vocabulary that she was requesting. But it was a moment where I said, gosh, I am not going to find anything like that in a textbook. It would take me a really long time. And I searched on YouTube, maybe there were some videos with dialogues with an optician or an optometrist, and I found some, but they weren't exactly what I needed. So I created my own. And I'm sort of retelling this experience to you so that I can share some of the digital tools that I used with this lesson. So the first thing I wanted to do was generate a dialogue. Like I said, I knew I wasn't going to find an optician dialogue in a textbook, and I didn't really find what I liked on YouTube. So I used ChatGPT. It's a generative AI tool, and I asked it to create a dialogue for me. And I will show you that example here. So my initial prompt was write a dialogue between an optician and a customer buying new prescription eyeglasses. This dialogue is for an adult ESL student. And retrospectively, I could have been a little bit more specific about what I was looking for, but for a first attempt, this is what ChatGPT gave me, and it was pretty decent. It is fairly long, so that is one place where I may have clarified my prompt, like how long did I actually want it to be? And I did not clarify what level the student learner was. But I ended up with a dialogue that I knew was an appropriate level for her. What it was missing, I thought, was some really specific vocabulary that she'd probably encounter when helping her friend. So I asked it to add a discussion about types of lenses, like bifocals or progressives. And so I got a little bit more vocabulary in the second version of this dialogue. So the optician explains that bifocals, what they are, and then the customer makes a choice. So if you're going to use AI tools, I just want to point out a few best practices. ChatGPT is only one of them. If you use other AI currently, I'd love to have you throw that in the chat so people are aware that ChatGPT is not the only tool you can use. And while you're doing that, I'll just point out one best practice to frame your experiences with AI is really to think of it as learning goals before tools. So I knew I wasn't going to find the dialogue I was looking for in published materials. And so AI was truly the fastest, most efficient way for me to get this dialogue. But if you are able to write your own dialogue or find something already created, or if you're just not getting exactly what you want from AI, do not worry about using the cool tool. Go to what you know first. So really AI should help you do your job more efficiently. And if it's not doing that, then don't use it. The next best practice I would say is to protect privacy. Your privacy, your learner's privacy, and you can do that by avoiding putting in any personal identifiable information into your prompt. So I would never put my learner's name. I would never ask for a specific location to be included in the dialogue, like the location where we live, or the name of a school or anything like that. I can always add those personally relevant details later to the dialogue that ChatGPT gives me, but I don't want to give that information to an AI tool. A next best practice is to think of it as an 80-20 approach. So AI is going to do 80% of the work, but your brain is equally important to this experience. And so you want to put in at least 20% of the work. And you're going to do that with the effort that you put in prompting and giving a very specific prompt, but also checking the results. You want to check the results for bias or accuracy, and also clarify and correct anything. So if it's not exactly what you wanted, ask AI to do it differently. World Education has, they have these maker spaces where they assemble adult educators and they do different projects. And so one of the projects that they did was they had adult educators learn how to use AI. And together they created something called an open prompt book. And I will share this resource with you in that handout I mentioned, but it's really great guidelines, especially if you're new to AI, about what you really should include in your prompt. And so they came up with this acronym, maybe it's not an acronym, but role, action, context, example, format. The most specific prompt to get you the best results with AI will include some, if not all of these things. So when you tell AI what your role is or what its role is, you are an instructor in a community-based ESL program. What action do you want it to perform? Write a rhythm and blues song, etc. What's the context? This is a great place to put in the level of the learners and exactly what you want out of the language or the results. If you give AI an example, that can be helpful because it can recreate or use that pattern. And then format is also great. Because we're talking about dialogues, we do want to mention that it should be a dialogue. Here's another example of that where you can see we just have green and blue here, but the green and the blue include a lot of the other categories like the role, the example, and the format. So I thought maybe we could practice this together today and ask ChatGPT to create a new dialogue for us. I need from you all a topic, and then we'll decide on a level and a length and any features or vocabulary that we want in that dialogue. If you've got ideas, what kind of topic or context would we want for a dialogue? Ooh, love it. Going to the doctor is our topic. Oh, that's also a good one. Parent-teacher conferences. All right, so if we're going to the doctor, this dialogue should be between which speakers?
The patient and the doctor, or the patient and the nurse.
Okay. And which level should we have this dialogue be? What level of learner? Low. Okay. Length. I'm going to have it do 6 lines of dialogue. Any features that we want, and here's an opportunity to make this a little, especially since I'm asking for a very short dialogue, 6 lines of dialogue, can we get even more specific than going to a doctor? What vocabulary would we want included in that dialogue? What are they talking about? Okay. Child has a rash. Okay. So if you already use ChatGPT or another AI tool, I encourage you right now to go to that and do this yourself. You could also watch me. Write a 6-line dialogue between a nurse and a patient who is a parent of a child with a rash. The dialogue should be written at a beginning ESL level. Did we have anything else? All right, let's see what we get with this. Oh, it's giving me choices. Doesn't do this all the time. Which response do you prefer? Hello, how can I help you today? My child has a rash. I see. When did it start? 2 days ago. It is red and itchy. Did your child eat something new? No, but we went to the park. Ooh. Response 2, hello, how can I help you today? My child has a red rash. I see. When did the rash start? 2 days ago. Does your child have a fever? No fever, just the rash. All right, I'm going to leave it up to you all. Put in the chat, which one do you prefer? And maybe why? That's a really good point. So number 1 uses it as a pronoun for the rash instead of specific vocabulary. So that could be potentially confusing. All right, number 1 gives extra context instead of extra symptoms. Okay. And 2, we get into fever as well as a symptom. Is there anything that you would prompt ChatGPT to change or to add to this? So if we decided, for example, on 1 and we didn't like it, we could ask it, please replace it with the rash. Is there anything else that you would want to add or change? I see. Okay. Yeah, that could be confusing. If the child is there, that makes more sense. It's also an opportunity to sort of teach kind of colloquial expressions that we might not necessarily be used to or have like a literal translation either. But you see very quickly, because we did so much prep work thinking about our prompt, we got a pretty decent dialogue that we can use with a learner. And you do have the opportunity then to clarify and change. If I wanted to use this dialogue then, I can, depending on the version of ChatGPT that you have, you can ask it to download it for you as a Google Doc or a Microsoft Word document, but often it's just easy for me to just Control C and copy, and then Control V, paste it into a document myself. Any questions about using AI to generate a dialogue? Yeah, there is a copy icon as well, right? That was the sort of the duplicate, the two boxes overlapping.
Jamie, I just have a question about recommended length for dialogues. Um, like I usually have multi-level classes, so now that I'm saying this out loud, maybe I just make it longer for more advanced learners and shorter for lower level beginners, but I've kind of used the same dialogue and then done different activities with it based on their level of proficiency, but sometimes I'm wondering now if maybe I was using too long of a dialogue. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's some really good thinking out loud. I do think that length is a fairly easy way to play with the level of a dialogue. And so
Mm-hmm.
take this very same context and make it a little bit longer, or continue that. Like, we did go to the park, and then what does the nurse ask? And make
Yeah,
it a little bit longer. But we could also, would you be curious? You want me to ask ChatGPT to recreate the dialogue for a higher level and see what we get?
sure. If we have time, sure.
All right. You want me to maintain 6 lines?
I think you could add some in there for an intermediate. Yeah.
All right, so we definitely get more complex language.
Mm-hmm.
This was the copy icon that somebody mentioned in the chat too, so that's a real easy way.
Cool.
All right, any other questions about using AI? All right, so then the next step in my experience, when I presented this dialogue between the optician and the customer, I wanted to record that dialogue to share it with my student, mostly because I'm not a fan of performing for a student. But you could very well do it live, change your voice. But I want to suggest some digital tools that you can use, because then it's nice that the student has that recording. When they leave a session with you, they can continue to listen to that outside of class. When you share the dialogue, it is going to depend too, I think, on whether or not you are in person or remote. So I went to the tool that I was most familiar with using in an instructional environment, and that was Loom. This may not be the best choice for everyone. Loom is a screencasting app, so it records anything going on the screen of your computer, and it will create a video file, not just an audio file. You do need an account to create the video, but there is a free version of that account. And when you share it with somebody, they do not need an account to view it. So I'll show you the video that I created with my son. Nobody tell him that I'm sharing this with you. So my son helped me read this dialogue. So he was the customer. Hello, welcome to Vision Care Optics. How can I help you?
Hi, I need new glasses. My old ones are broken.
Oh no, I can help you with that. Do you have your prescription with you?
Yes, here it is.
Thank you. Let me check it. I see that you need lenses for both distance and reading. Would you like bifocal or progressive lenses?
I'm not sure. What's the difference?
Good question. Bifocals have two sections. The top part is for seeing far away, and the bottom part is for reading. There is a visible line between the two sections.
Oh, I think I've seen those before. What about progressives?
Progressive lenses don't have a visible line. Instead, they have a smooth transition from distance vision to reading vision. This means you can see clearly at all distances without switching glasses.
That sounds nice. Are there any disadvantages?
Some people need time to adjust to progressives because they have to move their head a little to find the right focus. But most people get used to them in a few days.
I see. Are they more expensive than bifocals?
Yes, progressives cost more because they have advanced technology, but they are more convenient.
I think I'll try the progressives.
Great choice. Now, let's pick a frame. Do you have a style in mind?
Not really. I just want something simple.
No problem. Let me show you some options. These are simple and lightweight, and these are a little more stylish but still comfortable.
I like this one. How much does it cost?
This frame is $80. The progressive lenses will be $150. Would you like any extra features like anti-glare or blue light protection?
I work on the computer a lot. Do you think blue light protection is good for me?
Yes, it can reduce eye strain and help you feel less tired after long hours on the computer.
Okay, I'll get that. How much will everything cost?
Let me calculate it for you. The total is $230, $80 for the frame, $150 for the progressive lenses, and no extra charge for blue light protection because it's included.
That's okay. How long will it take to make them?
It usually takes about 1 week. We will call you when your glasses are ready.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me take some measurements for the lenses and we'll get started. All done. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. All right, so I want to point out that this presentation here, I don't think was the ideal way to do it. I just was in the moment. I was like, all right, I have Loom on my computer. Let's record this. When I shared it with a student, I was doing a virtual lesson. So I did not share my screen because I didn't want her to be distracted by all of the text. I just wanted her to listen. So I shared sound, but I didn't share the video part. Looking back at it, if I were to do it over again, I might just change the image and put up one still photo of an optician and a customer. If you were feeling super creative and you wanted to act out a dialogue, you could create a video with Loom that way as well. One nice feature I think about Loom is that there is a playback speed option because it's a video. So I can click on this 1x, and if needed, I could slow it down to 0.8 so that my student could understand just a little bit more because it was slower. If you use Loom, when you share with somebody, you just click the copy link up here, and then you can share that link with learners. Other tools for recording. If you have a smartphone, you probably have by default an app called Voice Memos or something like that that allows you to record. And this is just a record and the file stays on your phone. So it's not necessarily within the text messaging app. If you use that, you can then, especially if you're in person, just sit down with the learner and put the phone in between you and play it like you would any other device that plays sound. You can also, if you were teaching remotely, you can send those files via text messages. Another idea is to use WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a free instant messaging app available on smartphones, tablets, and computers. One reason I think it might be a good idea is that students from other countries are usually very familiar with this app. And it does require an account linked to a phone number, so know that. But it works on Wi-Fi and does not require cellular data. So that could be a plus. If you use it, you can send voice messages or video messages, and you would do that by using one of these icons here when you open up to have a chat with somebody. So you could click the camera to create the video message or the microphone to create the voice message. And then you would send that just like you would a text message, but you're sending it through WhatsApp. And so that could be a nice tool if you know your learners use this app, and particularly if you are working remotely or you want them to be able to take the recording away with them to listen to again. Vocaroo is another fun tool. This is online, and I think it is probably, of all of these things, it's the easiest one to use. You go to this Vocaroo site, and I'll show you that in just a minute. It's an online voice recorder, so you can record, share, and download your voice messages. Super easy to use, no account required for either user. So the person who's creating the sound file and the person who's listening to the sound file. You can share the recordings with learners via a link that it creates, but it also creates a QR code for you. One thing that you need to know is that it's the site that is keeping that file, that sound file. Vocaroo keeps that. And so they eventually will delete those files. They won't be available until eternity. And it depends, they say anywhere between 3 and 12 months. So it depends on how frequently your file is being accessed when they decide to delete it. You do have the option to download the file that you create, and then it would just live on your computer or your smartphone or wherever you downloaded it to. And then you would have to figure out how to share that file with learners. But I'll just show you quickly a very simple format. It's vocaroo.com. There's one button to push. And so I push that button, I speak into it, and then it lets me save or recreate the file. When I share with students, I get this, and I can click QR code and it will create a QR code for me. I can click download, like I said, and then it would save that file to my computer, or it gives me this link here. And so if you happen to have a phone nearby and you want to scan this QR code, it does take you to a recording that I created. And if you use the link, this is where it would take you. It would look like this, and then you just push play. Hi, this is Jamie from Wisconsin Literacy. What ideas do you have for using Vocaroo with learners? So Vocaroo could be a nice, fairly simple way to record a dialogue as well. Any questions about recording or sharing audio versions of dialogues?
Jamie, have you discovered any preference over one or the other for certain types, lengths, something?
That's a good question. I have not noticed any well, there are some restrictions on length. Vocaroo has, I think you can record like up to 30 minutes on Vocaroo. So not a lot of limitations there. Loom, the very first tool that I showed you that records a screen, if you're using the free version, you can only record 5 minutes of length. Was that your question, Mary Kay, or was it about something else?
It could be a variety of criteria. It's fine.
Okay. Any other questions about recording dialogues? I do want to acknowledge that like having two voices could be a challenge, especially if you don't have another person to record the dialogue with you. I have tried to research, like, are there AI tools out there that if I could just give it a text, would it create a recording for me? They exist, but there are not any nice free ones, free and easy ones at the moment. But I'll let you know when that happens. The last group of tools that I want to talk about are tools that you could use throughout a lesson using your recorded dialogue to help build some dialogue comprehension. That first video I showed you of the man teaching the Indonesian dialogue, he wasn't using any digital tools, right? He did use a picture though to set up the context of that dialogue. And then he was working with people in person. But there are digital tools that you can use to kind of recreate those parts of the lesson and extend the lesson and make it interactive as well. I like to think of a dialogue, even when it's an oral dialogue, as a text. So we're not reading the text, we're listening to it, but I still set it up the same way I would a reading lesson, where I have before listening or reading comprehension activities, during and after listening. So before, I like to set the context, just like the man did with the picture of the two people greeting each other, and activate learners' prior knowledge. So who are the speakers going to be and what are they talking about? During a dialogue, I like to set a purpose for listening. And I know that I'm going to play that dialogue several times. I don't expect a learner to get it the very first time. But I do want to give the learner the opportunity to just listen to the whole thing and use some of their like coping survival listening strategies and not tell them what to pay attention to. So the first listen, I just say, I just want you to listen and tell me what you understand. The next times, I try to design activities that help them clarify isolated words or ideas. And then we work on repeating that dialogue verbally, much like the man did in the video with the Indonesian dialogue. So I'll do it, or the recording will do it several times, and then we'll do it. So I'll stop the recording and we can repeat. And then I'll stop the recording and see if the student can fill in the very next line. After listening activities is where I like to come in with the reading and writing or more speaking to extend comprehension of that dialogue or of that context, and then apply language in new or more personally relevant contexts. So this is where we could sort of adapt that dialogue to whatever the student needed. I am a huge fan of digital whiteboards, even if you are teaching in person. I think it's a great way to learn digital skills and also have learners doing hands-on tasks. So when I think about supplementing dialogues with some of these before, during, and after comprehension activities, I think about like, how could I build that lesson on a whiteboard? Jotboard is a tool that you could use as a whiteboard, and then Padlet is another tool. So I'll just give you examples of how I built out this optician lesson plan with Jotboard. If you are familiar at all with Google Jamboard, which went away a while ago, Jotboard I think is probably the most similar to that tool. So here's a Jotboard. I have a free version. So if I wanted people to be in this whiteboard with me, I could only have up to 5 people. That's the limitation of the free version. So because we are more than 5 on this call today, I'm not going to ask you to join me in it because who knows what will happen. But just know that that is a limitation if you teach in a class setting. But here, before is where I would want to set up that context and the prior knowledge. So I left this blank purposely so that you could see the process. I would just click on the image icon over here, and then I can search Google Images from here. You can tell that I've practiced because it's going to pop that in for me right here. And then I'll just click search, and it gives me lots of different pictures that I could add. I like this one because we have a female optician and a male customer, which matches the voices in my dialogue. And then it pulls in this picture for me that I can resize. So I would just take the opportunity before listening to the dialogue to talk with my student about, like, who do we see here? This is an optician, this is a customer, what is he doing? I can then pull in some pictures about the vocabulary that she'll hear in the dialogue. Here's a picture of bifocals, and the difference between bifocals versus progressives. She did ask that too. After her very first listen, that was her question. What are those? And so it was really helpful to have pictures. The next during listening activity that we did to check comprehension was a two-part. So I wanted her to listen again and then use the pen tool to circle. Did the customer end up going with bifocals or progressives? So she would circle progressives. Did the customer choose anti-glare or blue light protection? And he chose blue light. And then the next listen, I wanted her to focus on the numbers. So how much did these cost? And she was able to write in those numbers as well. And then we brought in some reading. And I think this is where whiteboards really shine. Most of what I just showed you, you could do on Google Slides, or you could do in a document, like a Word document, or on a piece of paper. But what I really like about whiteboards is the ability to make them manipulative, and they're really easy to drag and drop things. So this is an activity where I would say, okay, which one of these is the optician? Which one is the customer? Let's just label them. And I can quickly drag like this. And then we can do a matching activity where we have a question and an answer. The optician asks the question, hello, welcome to Vision Care Optics. How can I help you? And then what would be the appropriate response? And we'll drag that into the box here and continue with that. So this is one way that I would use a digital whiteboard, and that I did use a digital whiteboard for this particular dialogue lesson. Any questions about Jotboard? And then I just wanted to show you Padlet as well as options that you have. Padlet, you may already be familiar, but Padlet is a digital, what they call like a bulletin board. So you're creating posts. And this first example I have for you is just, to me, it was a nice way to house my whole lesson. So, and I sorted it for myself into these columns: before, during, and after. I can share this Padlet with a student. We could be in it at the same time. I could also share this if I built it very clearly as sort of a standalone lesson that I might ask my student to do independently. So first do this, then do this, then do this. But I posted here an image, so I can open up that and we can do the very same pre-listening activity. I embedded the link from my Loom recording right here in the Padlet, so we can listen to the dialogue while being in the Padlet. And then I included pictures of the vocabulary. One extension activity that I did that I didn't have in the Jotboard is, after we talked about the vocabulary and we listened to the dialogue, we then went to an online glasses shopping site, and we just kind of poked around in there to see some of that vocabulary in context. So I included a link to warbyparker.com here in my lesson on my Padlet. Another way to use a Padlet, and so this is just a matter of choosing a different background. That first one you saw, I had it in very clear columns. Here I chose a background, I believe it's called Canvas, where the posts are movable and I can also color code them. So you can see I made this one pink and green. So again, we have a before listening, a listening. This third activity here is a matching activity. And so because these posts are manipulable, I'm trying to create a word. Because you can manipulate them, I could just drag them. So I remember the blue light was free. The frames were $80. The other thing that you can do with a Canvas background is if you click on these three dots here, I could choose connect to a post. And I know that progressive lenses were $150, so I'll connect it here. And if I got these guys out of the way, you would see that there is now a line. So that's a fun feature of Padlet, is the ability to move these things and to manipulate them. The other really cool feature of Padlet is that Padlet itself has a recording option. So instead of using Loom, I could actually record the whole dialogue in Padlet. I would click down here on Add a Post, and it's in the plus 13 because there are 13 more tools that you can use on Padlet. And then I would click Audio Recorder. It's not going to let me record right now, I don't believe, because I'm already using my microphone on Zoom. But I would simply hit this pink button, Start Recording. I can record up to 5 minutes on the free version of Padlet. I have a paid version, so you can see it says 30 minutes long. But if you're using the free version, you have 5 minutes. So I could record the dialogue that way. I could also create some speaking activities for students. So this one, after, record your response to the optician.
Welcome to Vision Care Optics. How can I help you?
That's just,
Well,
oh, that's just the very first line of the dialogue, but then a student,
welcome to Vision.
let's go back. A student can actually record themselves responding by creating a separate post or by going to the comment section and clicking on the microphone there. And so they can practice the speaking within Padlet as well. Any questions about Padlet? To share with a learner, it is just this little share arrow icon. And it's the link here, copy link to board. You could also share with a QR code. You are also able to change the permissions of anybody who visits. So if I wanted students to be able to record their comments, I have to give them more permission than just a reader. I would have to give them writer permission or commenter permission. Writer creates new posts, comments, you can comment on existing posts. I just want to wrap up with a quick review of all the tools that we talked about. One of my main criteria for presenting tools in this series is that they're free. And then secondly, that they're fairly easy to use. So we talked about ChatGPT. You can use a free version of that. Loom, when you use the free version, you are limited to 25 video creations at 5 minutes each. Vocaroo is free and you do not need an account either. WhatsApp is free. You do need an account, and your learner would also need an account. Padlet, the free version, limits you to creating 3 Padlets or like 3 bulletin boards, but you can delete Padlets to stay within that limit. What I didn't mention here is that you are also limited with the recordings to 5 minutes each. And then Jotboard is free, but the free version limits you to having 5 people or 5 collaborators in your whiteboard at the same time. If you have questions, I'm willing to hear those and try to answer those now, but I also want to do a plug for next month. The topic for digital tools for teaching in May will be math. Lots of really fun, great tools out there for teaching math. So that will be May 29th from 11 to 12. And you can find that on our tutor training page. but I will also send a link in my follow-up email if you'd like to register for that.